The chamber was enormous, larger than any stadium Jake Morrison had ever seen back on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above that it disappeared into darkness, and the walls curved in a perfect circle that seemed to go on forever. Hundreds of seats rose in tiers around the central floor, each one occupied by a different alien species. Some looked almost familiar, with 2 arms and 2 legs like humans. Others were so strange that Jake had trouble understanding what he was looking at. There were creatures made of what looked like living crystal, beings that floated in tanks of colored gas, and things that seemed to be made entirely of light and shadow. Jake stood alone at the center podium, a small platform that rose from the floor like a white marble column. His dress uniform felt heavy on his shoulders, the dark blue fabric crisp and formal. He was a tall man, just over 6 feet, with short brown hair starting to gray at the temples. His face was weathered from years of service, and his dark eyes were calm despite the situation. Behind him, about 20 feet back, stood his 2 companions. Lieutenant Amy Chen was a short woman, with black hair pulled into a tight bun, her fingers dancing nervously over her datapad as she monitored communications. Next to her stood Dr. Peter Grant, an older man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes constantly moving as he studied the alien delegates with professional curiosity. The Vrexian ambassador dominated the section directly in front of Jake. Zarthox was a massive, reptilian creature, easily 9 feet tall even while sitting. His scales were deep green with hints of gold, and his eyes were yellow with vertical slits for pupils. When he spoke, his voice came out as a deep hiss that the translation device in Jake's ear converted to perfect English. The ambassador's clawed hands rested on the arms of his chair, each finger tapping slowly as if counting down to something. "Captain Morrison," Zarthox began, his forked tongue flickering between his teeth, "we have reviewed your species application for membership in the Galactic Council. We have studied your history, your technology, and your current territorial claims. After much deliberation, we are prepared to offer humanity a place among the civilized species of the galaxy." Jake nodded slowly, waiting for what he knew would come next. The word offer sounded positive, but the tone in Zarthox's voice suggested otherwise. "However," the Vrexian continued, leaning forward in his seat, "there are certain requirements that all new members must accept. These terms are not negotiable. They have been established over thousands of years and have maintained peace and order throughout the galaxy. Your compliance is not optional if you wish to join us." A holographic display appeared in the air between Jake and the council, words scrolled past in dozens of languages. But Jake's translator highlighted the human text. He read through the terms, his expression remaining carefully neutral even as his stomach tightened. "First," Zarthox said, gesturing to the display with one clawed hand, "humanity must immediately cease all military expansion. Your current fleet will be reduced by 70%. All shipyards capable of producing military vessels will be dismantled or converted to civilian use. You will be permitted to maintain a defense force sufficient for internal security and piracy suppression only." Jake's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. Amy shifted her weight behind him, and he heard the soft beep of her datapad as she sent updates back to Earth. "Second," the Vrexian continued, "all faster-than-light technology currently in human possession will be surrendered to Council oversight. Your jump drives, your quantum communication systems, and your navigation charts will become property of the Council. You will be granted licenses to use approved technology under Council supervision." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some of the alien delegates nodded in what might have been approval. Others remained silent, watching Jake's reaction with interest. "Third, humanity will provide an annual tribute of resources to support Council operations. The amount will be calculated based on your productive capacity and will be adjusted yearly. This tribute will include raw materials, manufactured goods, and a percentage of your technological innovations." Peter made a soft sound behind Jake, something between a cough and a protest. Jake didn't turn around, but he raised one hand slightly, a signal for his team to remain quiet. "Fourth," Zarthox said, and his voice took on a tone that might have been satisfaction, "humanity will accept guidance overseers on all major colony worlds and on Earth itself. These overseers will ensure that Council policies are being followed and that humanity is progressing in acceptable directions. They will have authority to investigate any activities they deem suspicious and to report directly to this Council." The Keltharian representative spoke up then, a being that looked like a large jellyfish floating in a sphere of water. Its voice came through as soft and musical, almost gentle. We understand these terms may seem harsh to a young species, but please understand they are for your own protection. The galaxy is dangerous, and many young civilizations have destroyed themselves through reckless expansion or uncontrolled technological development. We offer you the wisdom of our experience. Jake finally spoke, his voice steady and clear. May I ask a question? Zarthox waved one clawed hand in permission. Have all current council members accepted these same terms? There was a pause. The Vrexian's eyes narrowed slightly. The circumstances of each species' admission are unique. Older members joined under different conditions when the council was still forming its policies. These current terms represent our refined understanding of how to properly integrate new members. So that's a no, Jake said quietly. That is irrelevant, Zarthox snapped, his tail lashing behind his chair. We are not here to debate ancient history. We are here to offer humanity a choice. Accept these terms and join the community of civilized worlds, or reject them and face the consequences of isolation. The Hixarian delegate leaned forward then, a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis made of black chitin. Its voice was clicking and harsh even through the translator. Perhaps the human does not understand the generosity being offered. Many species are never given this option. They are simply conquered and absorbed. The fact that humanity is being offered membership at all is a sign of our respect for your potential. Your potential to be useful, Peter muttered behind Jake, just loud enough to be picked up by the microphones. Zarthox's head swiveled toward the scientist. Did you wish to speak, human? Jake stepped forward slightly, drawing attention back to himself. Dr. Grant was simply making an observation. I think we need some time to review these terms and consult with our government. This is obviously a significant decision. The Vrexian settled back in his chair. You may have 30 of your minutes. Use the chamber behind you. We will await your response. Jake turned and walked toward the door that had appeared in the wall behind him. Amy and Peter followed quickly, and the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The room was small and plain, with just a table and chairs. Jake immediately activated his quantum communicator, and the face of Admiral Frank Hayes appeared in holographic form above the table. Admiral Frank Hayes looked tired, even through the hologram. He was sitting in his office at Earth Defense Command, and Jake could see the lights of Geneva glowing through the window behind him. The Admiral was an older man, nearly 60, with steel gray hair cut military short and a face full of lines earned from decades of difficult decisions. He listened without interrupting as Jake summarized the Council's terms, his expression growing darker with each point. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, Frank said when Jake finished. They want us to destroy most of our fleet, hand over our technology, pay them tribute, and let them put watchdogs on every human world. Does that about cover it? That covers it, sir, Jake replied, leaning against the table. The Vrexian called it membership. I'd call it something else entirely. Frank was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on his desk. I've been on a call with the Security Council for the past hour. We went over these terms the moment you transmitted them. The vote was unanimous, Jake. Earth's answer is no. We didn't spend 200 years building a civilization among the stars just to hand it over to these people. Amy looked up from her datapad. Sir, they made it pretty clear that rejection has consequences. The Vrexian basically threatened us. Let him threaten, Frank said, his voice hard. We knew this was a possibility. The question is what happens next. Jake, what's your read on the Council? Are they going to back down if we push back? Jake thought about the alien faces staring down at him from their elevated seats. No, sir, I don't think so. They're used to species accepting these terms. The way they talked about it, this is standard procedure for them. Young species come in, get pushed around, and accept it because they're scared. I think they expect us to do the same. What about allies? Peter asked, adjusting his glasses. Surely some of the council members must be uncomfortable with this arrangement. The Keltharian seemed less aggressive than the Vrexian. Frank shook his head. Intelligence says the Keltharians are just playing good cop to the Vrexians' bad cop. They all benefit from this system. The older members get tribute and cheap technology from the newer ones. It's exploitation dressed up as diplomacy. So what do we do? Amy asked. If we reject their terms, we're basically declaring ourselves outside the galactic order. That makes us a target. We were always going to be a target, Jake said quietly. The moment we developed jump drives and started expanding, we became a threat to their established order. They can't control what they can't dominate. This membership offer was never about welcoming us. It was about neutralizing us before we become too powerful. Frank nodded slowly. Exactly. Our analyst came to the same conclusion. So here's what I'm authorized to tell you. Go back in there and try one more time to negotiate. Offer them a genuine alliance, equal partnership, mutual defense, technology sharing on fair terms. If they accept, great, but I already know they won't. And when they refuse? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Then you walk away, politely but firmly. Make it clear that humanity is willing to be friends but not servants. Let them know we're done with the conversation. Sir, Amy interjected. Walking out of the Galactic Council is going to have serious repercussions. They might see it as an insult worth going to war over. They might, Frank agreed. But backing down now just delays the inevitable. If we accept these terms, we'll be crippled. Our economy will collapse under the tribute demands. Our colonies will be controlled by their overseers. In 10 years, we'll be so weak they could take everything anyway. At least this way we have a fighting chance. What kind of chance? Peter asked. The Council has hundreds of member species. Even if most of them don't have significant military forces, the numbers are overwhelming. Frank's expression became grim. We've been running scenarios since first contact. Yes, they have numbers, but our technology is different from theirs. Our tactics are different. Most importantly, our will to fight is different. The Council has been at peace for so long that most member species have forgotten what real war looks like. We haven't, we remember. Jake understood what the Admiral wasn't saying directly. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself multiple times. The nuclear standoffs of the 20th century, the resource wars of the 21st, the colony rebellions of the 22nd. Every generation of humans had known conflict. They had learned how to fight and how to survive against terrible odds. There's something else, Frank continued. We've been in contact with several independent species, worlds that never joined the Council. They're interested in forming their own alliance, one based on mutual respect rather than domination. If we stand up to the Council, others might join us. But if we kneel, nobody will trust us to stand with them. The hologram flickered slightly as the quantum connection adjusted. You have about 15 minutes left, Jake. Go back in there and give them one last chance to do this right. Offer them real partnership. Be respectful but clear, and if they refuse, come home. We'll deal with whatever comes next together. Understood, sir, Jake said, straightening up. We'll do our best. Frank's expression softened slightly. I know you will. That's why I sent you. Good luck, Captain. Earth is with you. The hologram disappeared, leaving the three humans alone in the small room. Amy was already updating her files, preparing for the next round. Peter was staring at the wall, probably running calculations in his head about their chances. Jake stood quietly thinking about what he needed to say. Do you think it will work? Amy asked without looking up from her datapad. Do you think there's any chance they'll accept a fair deal? No, Jake said honestly. But we have to try anyway. It needs to be on record that we offered them a real alternative. When this all goes sideways, I want history to show that we tried to do this peacefully. And when they refuse? Peter asked. What exactly is our exit strategy? We're on their station, surrounded by their security with one small shuttle. If they decide to detain us, we don't have a lot of options. Jake smiled, though there was no humor in it. Then we find out if the Council is willing to start a war by kidnapping diplomats. My guess is they're not that stupid. They'll bluster and threaten, but they'll let us go. They think we're insignificant enough that our rejection doesn't matter. And are we? Amy asked quietly. Insignificant? Not even close, Jake replied. They're about to learn that the hard way. Come on, our time is almost up. Let's go see if the Council can surprise us. They walked back toward the chamber door. Jake paused with his hand on the control panel, taking a deep breath. This was it. The next few minutes would determine whether humanity entered the galactic community as equals or as enemies. He preferred the first option, but he was prepared for the second. He pressed the panel and the door slid open, revealing the vast chamber beyond. The chamber felt even larger when Jake stepped back onto the central podium. Every alien eye was on him, hundreds of different species waiting to hear humanity's answer. The air felt thick with expectation, and Jake could sense that most of the Council had already decided how this would go. They expected him to accept their terms, maybe after some token protests. They expected humanity to fall in line like every other species had done before. Zarthox leaned forward in his seat, his yellow eyes gleaming with what looked like satisfaction. "Welcome back, Captain Morrison. Have you and your government reached a decision regarding our generous offer?" Jake stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back in a formal military stance. "We have, Ambassador. My government has carefully reviewed your proposed terms and would like to present a counterproposal." A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. Several delegates shifted in their seats. The Vrexian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he gestured with one clawed hand for Jake to continue. "Humanity proposes a genuine alliance based on mutual respect and equal partnership," Jake began, his voice clear and steady. "We would be willing to share defensive technology with council members in exchange for similar sharing from your side. We propose mutual defense agreements where all members come to the aid of any member under attack. We suggest open trade agreements with fair tariffs and no mandatory tribute systems. We would welcome cultural and scientific exchanges with all member species." Jake paused, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. "We would also propose that any council observers on human worlds would be matched by human observers on council worlds, ensuring transparency works both ways. We believe that new members should have the same rights and responsibilities as founding members, with full voting privileges from day one." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the Hixarian delegate began making a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter, a harsh clicking noise that echoed through the vast space. Other delegates joined in, and soon the chamber was filled with various alien sounds of amusement. Zarthox held up one hand and the noise died down. "Captain Morrison, I believe you misunderstand the nature of this council. We are not a democracy of equals. We are a hierarchical system built on wisdom and experience. Older species guide younger ones. The strong protect the weak. This is how order is maintained across the galaxy." The Keltharian's musical voice drifted across the chamber. "Perhaps we were unclear in our initial presentation. The terms we offered are not a starting point for negotiation. They are the final and only terms available. Every species that has joined this council has accepted these same requirements." "Then perhaps your system is flawed," Jake said quietly. The chamber erupted in outrage. Dozens of delegates began shouting at once, their translators creating a cacophony of angry voices. The Hixarian was on its feet, its mandibles clicking furiously. Several other delegates were gesturing aggressively, and the noise level rose to a painful degree. Zarthox slammed one massive hand down on his armrest, creating a booming sound that cut through the chaos. "Silence." His voice was a thunderous hiss. The chamber fell quiet, though Jake could feel the anger radiating from every direction. The Vrexian stood slowly, rising to his full 9 feet of height. "Captain Morrison, I will excuse your ignorance because your species is young and clearly lacking in proper education. But let me make something absolutely clear. The Galactic Council has maintained peace and prosperity for over 5,000 years. Our system works. Your arrogant suggestion that we change our entire structure to accommodate one primitive species is beyond insulting." Jake remained calm, though Amy had moved closer behind him, probably worried about their safety. "With respect, Ambassador, I'm not suggesting you change your structure. I'm simply saying that humanity will not join under the current terms. We came here hoping for friendship and partnership. What you're offering is subjugation. What we are offering is civilization." Zarthox roared, his tail lashing behind him. "We are offering your species protection, guidance, and a place in the greater galactic community. And you dare to refuse because your pride is wounded?" "It's not about pride," Jake replied, his voice still steady. "It's about freedom. My people didn't spend centuries fighting for independence and self-determination, just to hand it over to a council of strangers. We'd rather stand alone than kneel together." The Keltharian floated forward slightly in its sphere. "Captain, please be reasonable. You speak of standing alone, but you must understand what that means. Without council protection, humanity will be vulnerable. There are threats in this galaxy that you cannot imagine. Pirates, slavers, ancient automated weapon systems, territorial disputes with aggressive species. The council keeps these dangers at bay. Without us, your colonies will be easy targets. Are you offering protection or making a threat?" Jake asked directly. The Keltharian pulled back, its body pulsing with colors that might have indicated embarrassment or anger. "I am simply stating facts. The galaxy is dangerous for those who stand outside the established order." Zarthox sat back down, his posture radiating contempt. Let me be perfectly clear, Captain Morrison, since you seem to require simple language. These are the terms. Accept them or reject them. But understand that rejection has consequences. The Council will not trade with non-member species. We will not offer aid or assistance. We will not defend your colonies from attack. And we will view any human expansion into disputed territories as an act of aggression. Do you understand what I am telling you? I understand perfectly, Jake said. You're telling me that if humanity doesn't submit, you'll isolate us economically and stand by while others attack us. You might even do the attacking yourselves. You're explaining that your offer of membership is actually a protection racket. Join us or face the consequences. How dare you? The Hixarian was clicking furiously again. We offer you a place among civilized species and you insult us with accusations. Jake turned to face the insectoid creature directly. Am I wrong? You just told me that refusing your terms means facing economic isolation and military vulnerability. That's not an invitation. That's a threat dressed in diplomatic language. Zarthox's voice dropped to a dangerous hiss. You are trying my patience, human. Your species is nothing in the scope of galactic civilization. You control a handful of systems in an insignificant corner of space. Your technology is crude. Your military is untested against real threats. You have no allies and no resources that we cannot obtain elsewhere. You are being offered membership out of courtesy, nothing more. If you refuse, you will be forgotten within a generation. Then it shouldn't bother you if we refuse, Jake said simply. The Vrexian's eyes widened slightly as if he hadn't expected that response. What? If we're so insignificant, our rejection shouldn't matter to you. Let us go our own way. We'll stay in our corner of space. You stay in yours. No conflict necessary. It is not that simple, the Keltharian said softly. The Council cannot allow species to develop outside our oversight. It creates instability. It encourages others to question the system. Your very existence as an independent power would be a threat to galactic order. So you won't let us remain neutral, Jake said, and it wasn't a question. Zarthox leaned forward again. I will give you one final chance, Captain Morrison. Return to your government. Explain to them the reality of their situation. They have one of your Earth weeks to accept our terms as stated. If they refuse, the Council will vote on sanctions and other appropriate measures. This is your last opportunity to make the intelligent choice. Jake looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the faces of dozens of species, some curious, some angry, some simply bored. He thought about everything his people had fought for, everything they had built. He thought about the colonies full of families, the ships full of explorers, the future that humanity had reached for among the stars. And he knew that giving that future to this council would be worse than any war. Ambassador Zarthox, Jake said clearly, I'm afraid I have to decline your offer. Humanity will not be joining the Galactic Council under these terms or any similar terms. We came here in good faith seeking partnership. What we found was an empire that calls itself a council. We're done here. The chamber exploded into chaos the moment Jake finished speaking. Delegates were shouting in dozens of languages, their translators struggling to keep up with the overwhelming noise. Some aliens were on their feet gesturing wildly. Others remained seated but were clearly broadcasting outrage through whatever methods their species used to communicate. The sound was deafening, a wall of anger and disbelief that washed over the central podium where Jake stood unmoved. Jake turned to Amy and Peter, speaking loudly enough to be heard over the din. Pack up everything. We're leaving now. Amy's fingers flew over her datapad, securing their data and closing all open communication channels. Peter gathered the few physical documents they had brought, sliding them into a protective case. Both of them moved quickly but carefully, their training keeping them calm despite the hostile atmosphere. Zarthox's voice cut through the noise like a blade. You cannot simply leave, Captain Morrison. This council has not dismissed you. You will remain here until we decide how to respond to your insult. Jake looked up at the Vrexian, his expression completely calm. Ambassador, with all due respect, we are not members of your council. We are not your subjects. We came here as representatives of a sovereign species to discuss potential membership. Those discussions have concluded. We are now exercising our right to depart. The Hixarian delegate scuttled forward to the edge of its platform. This is unprecedented. No species has ever rejected council membership. You cannot simply walk away from us. Watch us, Jake said simply. He gestured to Amy and Peter. Let's go. They started walking toward the exit, a large doorway at the far end of the chamber. The distance seemed enormous now, easily 100 yards across the polished floor. Every step echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen over the council. Hundreds of alien eyes followed their movement. The Keltharian's voice drifted after them, softer now but somehow more menacing. "Captain Morrison, please reconsider. You are making a terrible mistake. The Council's protection has kept countless species safe for millennia. Without it, humanity will not survive the dangers that await you." Jake didn't stop walking, but he called back over his shoulder. "We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived world wars and nuclear weapons. We survived our own worst instincts. I think we'll manage without your protection." They were halfway to the exit when security drones began emerging from panels in the walls. The machines were sleek and silver, roughly spherical with various sensors and weapons ports visible on their surfaces. They moved silently through the air, positioning themselves between the humans and the exit. Within seconds, at least 20 drones had formed a barrier, their red sensor lights focused on Jake and his team. Jake stopped walking. Amy and Peter halted beside him, both tensing up. The situation had just become significantly more dangerous. Jake raised his voice, making sure it carried throughout the chamber. "Ambassador Zarthox, are you seriously considering detaining diplomatic representatives? That would be an act of war under every civilized code of conduct I'm aware of." Zarthox rose from his seat again, his massive form dominating the chamber. "You dare speak to me of civilized conduct after your display of arrogance and disrespect? You insult this council, reject our generous offer, and now you threaten us with war?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Jake replied, his voice steady but hard. "I'm reminding you that diplomats are supposed to be sacrosanct. If you detain us, if you harm us, Earth will consider it an act of aggression, and we will respond accordingly. Is that really what you want? Do you want to start a war today over hurt feelings?" The chamber was silent now. Every delegate was watching the confrontation unfold. Jake could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut. His hand moved slowly to his side, not reaching for a weapon but making it clear he was prepared for whatever came next. A new voice spoke up, deep and rumbling. It came from the section to Jake's left, where a massive creature sat that looked like it was made of living stone. The Brogath were known throughout the galaxy as warriors, and their representative on the council was a towering figure named Krogar. "The human speaks truth. To detain diplomats would violate the oldest laws we claim to uphold. It would make us no better than the lawless raiders we claim to protect against." Zarthox's head swiveled toward the Brogath. "They have insulted us. They have rejected the will of this council. We cannot simply allow them to leave as if nothing has happened." "Why not?" Krogar's rumbling voice carried a hint of amusement. "If they are as insignificant as you claim, let them go. If they wish to stand alone, let them learn the price of that choice. But do not stain this council's honor by breaking the laws of diplomatic conduct." Other voices began joining in, some agreeing with Krogar, others supporting Zarthox. The council was dividing before Jake's eyes. He stood quietly, waiting to see which side would win. Amy was breathing fast beside him, her hand gripping her datapad so hard her knuckles were white. Peter looked pale but determined. Finally, Zarthox made a sharp gesture with one clawed hand. "Fine, let them go. Let them return to their pathetic little corner of space and wait for reality to teach them what this council could not. Security, stand down." The drones hesitated for a moment, then slowly moved aside, creating a path to the exit. Jake nodded once to the Vrexian, a gesture that could have been respect or mockery depending on how you looked at it. Then he continued walking, his team following close behind. They were almost to the door when the Hixarian called out one last time. "You will regret this decision, human, when your colonies are burning and your people are crying out for help. Remember that you chose this path. Remember that the council offered you safety and you threw it away for pride." Jake stopped at the doorway and turned back one final time. "You're right about one thing. We are making a choice, but it's not pride that drives us. It's principle. We believe that free people should stay free. We believe that strength comes from standing together as equals, not from kneeling before masters. If that means we stand alone, then so be it. But we won't compromise what we are just to make you comfortable." He looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. "You could have had humanity as friends. You could have had us as allies. We would have stood beside you, fought beside you, built a better galaxy beside you. Instead, you tried to make us servants. That's your mistake, not ours. The three humans walked through the doorway and it sealed behind them with a solid thunk. They moved quickly through the corridors of the station, following the marked path back to the docking bay where their shuttle waited. Security drones followed them at a distance, making sure they actually left, but none attempted to interfere. When they reached the shuttle, a massive Brogath warrior was standing beside it. He was even larger than Krogar had appeared on the hologram, easily 8 feet tall and broad as a wall. His skin looked like gray stone with veins of darker minerals running through it. His eyes were deep and intelligent, studying Jake with what might have been respect. "I am Commander Vorg," the Brogath said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "I command security for this station. I wanted to meet you before you left." Jake stopped, uncertain if this was another obstacle or something else. "Commander, are you here to cause problems?" "No," Vorg said. "I am here to tell you something. I have studied your species' military history as part of my security assessment. I have read about your wars, your tactics, your willingness to fight against impossible odds. The Council thinks you are weak because you are young. They are wrong." The Brogath stepped aside, clearing the path to the shuttle. "My people were once like yours. We valued freedom and honor above all else. Then we joined the Council, and over the centuries we forgot what it meant to be warriors. We became guards and enforcers for others. I envy you, Captain Morrison. You still remember what it means to stand for something." Jake studied the alien warrior's face, seeing something there that surprised him. Understanding, perhaps. Or regret. "Thank you, Commander. That means something coming from a Brogath." Vorg nodded slowly. "Go home, Captain. Prepare your people. The Council will not forgive this insult. War is coming whether you want it or not. But when it comes, fight well. Show them what it means to face a species that refuses to kneel." Jake extended his hand, a human gesture. After a moment, Vorg reached out and grasped it, his massive stone hand engulfing Jake's. They shook once, an acknowledgement between warriors. Then Jake and his team boarded the shuttle and sealed the hatch. The small ship lifted off smoothly, departing the massive Council station. As they cleared the docking area and prepared for the jump to faster-than-light speed, Amy pulled up the sensor displays. "Multiple ships are tracking us, but nobody is moving to intercept. I think we're actually going to make it out of here." "Of course we are," Jake said, settling into the pilot's seat. "They wanted to see if we would back down. We didn't. Now they have to figure out what to do about it." Peter was staring out the viewport at the receding station. "We just declared independence from the entire galactic order. Do you really think Earth can survive what's coming?" Jake engaged the jump drive, and the stars began to streak past as they entered faster-than-light travel. "I don't know, Peter. But I know we couldn't survive as slaves. Whatever happens next, at least we'll face it as free people." The Galactic Council chamber remained in chaos for nearly an hour after the humans departed. Delegates argued and shouted, their voices overlapping into an incomprehensible roar of outrage and confusion. Some demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others called for economic sanctions. A few voiced concerns about the precedent this would set for other species. The chamber had never seen such disorder in living memory. Zarthox finally managed to restore some semblance of order by threatening to adjourn the session entirely. When the noise died down to manageable levels, he addressed the Council with barely controlled fury. "What we have just witnessed is an unprecedented act of defiance. No species in 5,000 years has rejected our offer of membership. The human captain insulted us, refused our generous terms, and walked out as if we were beneath his consideration. This cannot stand." The Hixarian delegate clicked its agreement. "We must make an example of them. If word spreads that a species can refuse the Council without consequences, others will follow. The entire structure of galactic civilization could collapse." But the Keltharian representative pulsed with colors that suggested uncertainty. "Perhaps we should consider why they refused. The human made some points about our membership terms that were not entirely without merit. Perhaps we have become too rigid in our requirements." "Nonsense," Zarthox hissed. "Our system has worked for millennia. One arrogant species does not change that. The problem is not our terms. The problem is human pride and ignorance." Krogar the Brogath spoke up from his section, his deep voice carrying authority. "I would like to present some information to the Council. As head of the Security Committee, I ordered a comprehensive analysis of human military capabilities after their application was submitted. The results are concerning." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing data on human fleet strength, weapons technology, and industrial capacity. Several delegates leaned forward to study the information more closely. The numbers were impressive for such a young species. As you can see, Krogar continued, humanity has been expanding rapidly. In less than 200 years since developing faster-than-light travel, they have established 47 colonies and maintain a fleet of over 3,000 military vessels. Their shipbuilding capacity is growing exponentially. So what? The Hicksarian interjected. 3,000 ships against the combined might of the Council is nothing. We could crush them in days, could we? Krogar pulled up more data. I have been studying human military history and doctrine. They have a concept they call total war. When faced with an existential threat, they do not just fight with their military. They convert their entire civilization into a war machine. Every factory, every resource, every citizen becomes part of the war effort. The chamber grew quieter as delegates absorbed this information. A smaller delegate from the Prixian species spoke up in a high-pitched voice. Surely that is just propaganda. No species could sustain that level of mobilization. Humans have done it before, Krogar said grimly. Multiple times in their history, during what they call the Second World War, they built over 300,000 military aircraft in a 4-year period. One nation alone produced a major warship every 3 days at the height of production, and that was with primitive industrial technology. Imagine what they could do now. Zarthox waved a dismissive claw. Ancient history. We are talking about space warfare, not primitive conflicts on a single planet. A new voice entered the discussion, soft and crystalline. It came from the eldest member of the council, a being simply known as the Ancient. She was a crystalline entity, her body made of living mineral that glowed with soft internal light. She rarely spoke, but when she did, the council listened. I have been reviewing human cultural data. Their literature, their films, their historical records. I find something deeply troubling. The chamber fell completely silent. The Ancient projected images into the air, scenes from human entertainment and history. Again and again I see the same pattern. Humans facing overwhelming odds. Humans refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain. Humans choosing death over submission. They have stories about last stands, about fighting to the last person, about never giving up no matter the cost. She paused, letting the images sink in. This is not just propaganda or fiction. This is how they see themselves. This is their cultural identity. We are dealing with a species that would rather die fighting than live under domination. The Keltharian pulsed nervously. Surely they would not choose extinction over accepting our terms. That would be irrational. Would it? The Ancient's voice was sad. Or would it be the most rational choice for a species that values freedom above survival? I have studied many civilizations in my long existence. Most species will compromise anything to ensure their continued existence. But there are a very few, who hold certain principles as more important than life itself. I fear humanity may be one of those species. Zarthox was growing impatient. This is all speculation. The fact remains that they have insulted us and must face consequences. I propose we begin with a trade embargo. Cut them off from all council resources and markets. Let them see how long their pride sustains them when their colonies start running short of supplies. Several delegates voiced agreement, but others looked uncertain. A representative from the Torgathi species raised a tentacle. I feel compelled to mention something. My government has been in informal contact, Debuo, with humanity regarding trade agreements. They offered very favorable terms, much better than what we typically receive through council-controlled channels. If we embargo them, they may simply form their own trading network with non-council species. Who would dare trade with them knowing it would anger the council? The Hicksarian demanded. The Torgathi delegate seemed to shrink slightly. Many species, Ambassador. Many species have grown tired of the council's economic restrictions. If humanity offers an alternative, they might take it. This statement created a new wave of concerned murmuring throughout the chamber. Zarthox's tail lashed in agitation. This is exactly the kind of instability I warned about. The human rejection is already encouraging others to question the system. Krogar pulled up another display, this one showing star charts. There is another concern. Humanity's colonies are strategically positioned along several major jump routes. If conflict does break out, they could seriously disrupt council shipping lanes. And their defensive positions are quite formidable. Taking their core worlds by force would be expensive in both ships and lives. Are you suggesting we simply accept their refusal? Zarthox turned on the Brogath. That we let them go unpunished? I am suggesting we think carefully before acting, Krogar replied calmly. I am a warrior. I understand conflict. But I also understand that some enemies are more dangerous than they appear. Humanity is young and their military is untested against galactic powers, but their potential for growth is enormous. If we attack them now, we may create the very threat we are trying to prevent. The ancient spoke again, her crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. I propose we conduct a comprehensive assessment before taking any action. We should analyze humanity's true capabilities, their diplomatic relationships, and their economic position. We should also consider carefully what message we send if we attack a species for refusing to submit to our terms. What message? The Hixarian clicked incredulously. The message is clear. Obey the council or suffer the consequences. Exactly, the ancient said softly. And what will younger species think when they hear that message? Will they see a just council maintaining order, or will they see an empire that destroys anyone who refuses to kneel? We claim to be different from the old empires. We claim to represent civilization and law. But if we wage war against humanity for the crime of wanting to remain free, are we truly different? The chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence. Several delegates shifted uneasily. The ancient had touched on something many preferred not to think about. The council had always presented itself as a force for peace and cooperation. But the truth was more complicated. The system worked because species accepted it, either willingly or through fear. What happened when someone refused both options? Zarthox finally spoke, his voice calmer but still hard. Very well. We will conduct a full assessment. But make no mistake, humanity cannot be allowed to succeed in their defiance. If we do nothing, others will follow their example. Within a generation, the council could fracture entirely. I propose we give humanity 1 month to reconsider. If they do not accept our terms by then, we vote on appropriate measures. The motion was seconded and passed with a majority vote, though not unanimously. Some delegates clearly wanted immediate action, while others harbored doubts about the entire situation. As the session finally adjourned, small groups formed throughout the chamber, delegates discussing the situation in hushed tones. In one corner, the Brogath Krogar spoke quietly with the ancient. You saw something in those humans, didn't you? Something that worries you? The crystalline being pulsed with soft light. I saw a reflection of what we once were, before we became comfortable and complacent. I saw a species on the edge of greatness or destruction, and I fear we may push them toward the latter. Can they actually stand against us? Krogar asked. I do not know, the ancient admitted. But I do know this. They will try, and that trying may cost more than anyone in this chamber imagines. We may win the war, but I fear what it will cost us. Not just in ships and resources, but in what we will have to become to achieve victory. Back on Earth, Admiral Frank Hayes stood in the command center watching displays that showed fleet movements and defensive preparations. Jake Morrison's shuttle had arrived safely, and the captain was on his way to headquarters for debriefing. But Frank already knew the important part. Humanity had refused to kneel. He looked at the star chart showing human colonies, trade routes, and defensive positions. They had been preparing for this possibility since first contact. Now it was real. The galaxy's established order had rejected humanity's desire for freedom, and now both sides would have to live with the consequences. Frank activated the communication system, sending encrypted messages to every human colony and ship. The orders were simple. Prepare for conflict, strengthen defenses, accelerate production, reach out to potential allies. Humanity was going to stand alone if necessary, but they would not stand defenseless. He thought about the council and their comfortable certainty that humanity would submit. They had made a critical mistake. They had treated humans like every other species they had encountered. But humans were different in one crucial way. They remembered what it cost to be free, and they were willing to pay that price again. The stars outside the window seemed to shine brighter somehow, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath to see what would happen next.